Welcome to the course Introductory Animal Physiology. I am excited to have you on board as we dive into the week 2 lecture number 4, the module nervous system. In this nervous system, in the lecture number 4, we'll see the organization of nervous system, neuron, glial cells and the gatekeepers. Hi, myself Dr. Tulasi Raman, working as assistant professor in veterinary physiology and biochemistry department in Faculty of Veterinary Animal Sciences, Institute of Agricultural Sciences, Banaras Hindu University. So let's start the course. So these are the objectives in week 2, lecture number 4. As I said, organization, neuron, glial cells and barriers we'll see. So first, in many books you might have seen that the neurophysiology is covered as a second chapter or the first chapter. Why they have given this much importance to the nervous system or the neurophysiology? So the nervous system is one of the important system that majorly coordinating the different systems of the body. So that is why they have given that much significance to the nervous system when they write books. Now, in veterinary neurology, by understanding this nervous system, the physiology of nervous system, the veterinarians can be able to diagnose many diseases which is related with nervous system, and they can develop a treatment according to the diagnosis. And most of the lesions or the symptoms which is exhibited when there is a problem with the nervous system, which involves there is an abnormal gait or the movement such as seizures or paralysis. That is the first and foremost sign or symptom one can get when there is an issue with the nervous system. Then the another way to find out whether the nervous system is working well or not by seeing their functional capacity of their special senses. So whenever there is an issue with the sensory systems, then that will exhibit the signs that leads to the diagnosis of the nervous disorders. And then by understanding the autonomic nervous system, one can able to develop a knowledge and the correlation between how the drugs acting in the body in the different systems. So, and this autonomic nervous system also controls the involuntary actions of the body, such as heart rate, blood pressure, where the consciousness is not involved, right? Unconsciously, whatever the functions are happening in the body, mostly it is all controlled by the autonomic nervous system. And when there is an issue, definitely that neural disorders can be diagnosed. And then the next important aspect in the veterinary neurology is that by studying and understanding the nervous system, we can able to diagnose whether is there any issue in the different barriers present in the nervous system, such as blood-brain barrier and then blood-CSF barrier. As you all might have heard about the hydrocephalus, mostly it occurs it is seen in the young animals. So in hydrocephalus, what happens? The cerebrospinal fluid used to tap inside the skull. So due to that reason, the skull enlarges. Now, why this is not happening in the adults? Because in adults, the skull has been set, but whereas in the young ones, it is very tender and the fissures are not closed properly, the ossification have not happened properly. So due to that reason, it is elongated and leads to the hydrocephalus condition. So these are all how the blood-brain, the different barriers, it is linked with the veterinary neurology disorders diagnosis. And then to perform these different types of diagnosis, we always require some diagnostic tool. In many cases, the electrical potential, the nervous system always understand in terms of electrical signals, how a computer understand the binary language, the same way our nervous system understands only in terms of electrical signals, nothing else. So by using that principle, electrical signal conversion, the one diagnostic tool they developed that is called as electroencephalography. Encephalo means cephalus means it is brain, head, right? And graphy, that is machine. It's like machine. So the electroencephalography is an equipment or an instrument is used to measure the electrical activity of a brain. Now, let us go into the next slide, which covers the organization of the nervous system. Nervous system are broadly classified into central nervous system and then peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system, when I say it is a center, so mostly it is related with the brain as well as the spinal cord. Now, coming to the peripheral nervous system, other than the brain and spinal cord, wherever the neurons and the nerves travels, that and all comes under the peripheral nervous system. Now, this peripheral nervous system receives an information through a neuron that is called as afferent division. So, you may have a confusion with the afferent division as well as efferent division. Many a times we will get confusion which one is sensory, which one is motor, right? Sensory means what? Something is happening, that is I am sensing, right? I am feeling, right? So once I am touching some hot object, that means the first thing is that sense, right? So what happens here is that once it is touched, the sense has taken place, felt, then the information will goes and then it will come back to the same hand and I will remove my hand from that hot pan, right? So the first and foremost is the sensory information. So sensory, that is related with the A. So A, if you see, there are two legs are there in A and these both the legs go and meets at a point. So the same way in sensory division or afferent division, when you say afferent, that means from periphery the information is gathered and is taken to the higher center. Okay, that means the top level. So that is what two legs are there, the two legs are going and joining. The same way from the periphery the information is gathered and it is going to the top, that is the brain, right? So that is the afferent division. So whenever you see afferent, that means it is related with the sensory informations or the sensory neurons and then the sensory informations, whereas opposite is efferent, that means it is sending the signal to the periphery from the top, that means from the centers. Now, the afferent divisions get stimulus from two ways. One is sensory stimulus, another one is called as visceral stimulus. Sensory stimulus means what? It involves the stimulus which involves the different senses, the special senses such as eyes, ears, nose, tongue, right? These are the different senses. So through that senses, something when we feel, that stimulus will go through the afferent division and it reaches the brain or the spinal cord. And then the next type of stimulus is that visceral stimulus. Visceral stimulus means inside the body you have lot of organs. From there also, whenever there is an issue, the stimulus, the signals will go to the higher center. Depending on that, the brain or spinal cord will issue the order. Next, we'll come to the efferent division. So in efferent division means that is the message which is carried from the center to the periphery. Now here there are three types are there. One is the somatic nervous system. You know soma. Soma means what? Body. So body, that is made up of major of bones and the muscles. So here it denotes the muscles. So the somatic nervous system which will send its signal through the motor neurons to the muscles. Based on that, the muscles will get contracted or relaxed. Then coming to the next part of the efferent division, that is autonomic nervous system. Already I told autonomic nervous system which controls all the involuntary actions of the body, and where the autonomic nervous system is broadly classified into or subclassified into sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. And the third one is enteric nervous system. That means this is the nervous system which try to regulates or controls the digestive system. So with that, but in many books you might have seen that enteric nervous system may not be included, or even the autonomic nervous system may be given as a separate system, but there are some books also given in this way. Now let us go to the next aspect of the brain. So first we have seen what is that veterinary neurology or the nervous system, what is its importance. Then next we have seen the organization of the nervous system. Third, we will see what are the different parts are present in the brain or different regions. So the CNS, the central nervous system, brain is broadly classified into 6 major regions. So the first one is that spinal cord and brainstem, right? So the sensory inputs as well as the motor outputs which will be conveyed from the trunk and limbs through to the spinal cord, whereas the face and neck, this sensory input and motor output is received and sends signal to the brainstem. Now the next part is that medulla. So medulla usually receives sensory input or the motor output via the cranial nerve nucleus. Now the most important function of the medulla is that it controls many life support functions such as respiratory, cardiovascular, digestion and vocalization. So it's important. So medulla's important function is that it supports the life supports functions. Then next is the pons. Pons acts as a relay center. Remember, it is a relay center. So relay means what? It just shifting. Someone in the relay race also, what happens? They will have a bait. So one person will run and they will just pass this bait to the next person and then they will take. So this type of race is called as relay race. So the same way, this pons also acts as a relay center. In many parts of the brain, everyone will act as a relay centers only. So relay center, it is a relay center for the cerebral cortex and the cerebellum. So whatever is the information from the periphery, it goes to the cerebellum, and then from cerebellum it goes to the pons and then it reaches the cerebral cortex. Then here also we have a cranial nerve nucleus. Via cranial nerve nucleus only these information, sensory informations of facial touch as well as the motor control of the chewing is done through this pons. It is a function of the pons. Next is the cerebellum. So cerebellum usually coordinates with the smooth movement as well as the motor learning. That is the function of cerebellum. So the next part of the region of the brain is that midbrain or mesencephalon, where this acts as a relay center for visual as well as the auditory system. For visual and auditory system, the midbrain acts as a relay center, and here the cranial nerve nuclei controls the eye movement as well as the pupillary constriction. Now one important part of the midbrain is that reticular formation. Many a times you may come across the reticular formation related questions. So this is one important question you can encounter in many exams. So reticular formation, it usually modulates consciousness, arousal, pain and sleep. So whenever you will encounter a question related with the consciousness or arousal or pain, then blindly you can select the option of a reticular formation. Then the next important part of the brain is that diencephalon. So diencephalon is having 3 important regions. One is thalamus, and above the thalamus is called as epithalamus. Epi means it is above, and hypo, that means below. So thalamus, above the thalamus is called as epithalamus and below the thalamus is called as hypothalamus. So thalamus will act as a relay centers for many sensory informations from the special senses such as auditory and vision, and other sensory systems, and acts as a relay center to convey the information to the cerebral cortex. And then hypothalamus, the important function of the hypothalamus is that it regulates the ANS. Very, very important it is. The hypothalamus is the one which controls or regulates the autonomic nervous system, and you might be heard or known about the hypothalamus, which is directly involved in the hormone secretion. And then it also maintain the homeostasis. One of the important part of the hypothalamus is that it maintains the homeostasis, it regulates the homeostasis. Next is the epithalamus, which connects the limbic system. Then the next part of the brain is that is the last, that is telencephalon or the cerebral hemisphere, where it is having three parts: cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, and hippocampus. Cerebral cortex main function is sensory perception as well as voluntary movement. And then coming to the basal ganglia, it modulates many motor functions. And then hippocampus, mostly related with the memory and spatial learning. So wherever you see the center related with the memory or spatial learning, then directly you can select the option of a hippocampus without having a second thought. Now, this is about the brain, the CNS regions. Now we will move on to the next aspect on what is the neuron. So neuron is the basic structural and functional unit of a nervous system. So when you take a nervous system, it will have two types of cell. One is nerve cell, that is called as neuron, and another one is called as a glial cell, that is non-neuronal cell. So these are the two types of cells are present in the nervous system. Remembers that. So coming to the parts of the neurons. So the neurons have soma. It is also called as perikaryon or neuronal cell body. Okay, these are all the other names of the neuronal cell body, that is soma or perikaryon. Now this perikaryon will have two processes. So one process is called as central process and another process is called as peripheral process. So the central process is the one which try to carry the information or receives the information from the periphery and move towards the soma, and that process is called as dendrites. Whereas the another process which emerge from the soma, that will carry the information or signals from the soma to the periphery, that process is called as axon. Apart from these two, there is another important part in the nervous system is that myelin sheath. So the cell which is responsible for the formation of this myelin sheath is Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system, whereas oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system. This process is called as myelination. So in myelination process, the myelin sheath is nothing but the fatty substance, lipid substance. It is made up of majorly lipid substance. Then this myelin sheath acts as an insulating layer because of the fatty layer, and it helps in the speed conduction of the signals. So due to that reason, the signal transmission looks like a creeping in nature. That is called as a saltatory conduction. So next is that the axon go and terminates where it makes the synapse. So synapse is a cleft or a space where the neurotransmitters is released from the axon terminal and the information is passed to the next neuron. That means either a dendrites or axon or soma or any organ. The postsynaptic, I am talking about the postsynapse. Then next is that organelles. Like other cells, neurons also have all the cell organelles. except centrioles. Due to that reason, the neurons cannot able to multiply. That is why it is very important to take care of your neurons, because once it get damages, it will be very difficult for the regeneration to take place because it lacks the centrioles. Next, we'll see some important terminologies related with the nervous system, such as the nerve bundle or fiber. So far I told about the axons. These axons are grouped together and form a nerve bundle or a fiber. Now these nerve bundles or fibers are grouped together and form a fasciculus. So now let us go to the classification of the neurons. The neurons are classified. There are many types of classification of neurons are there. So we will see here based on the shape as well as the functions. Based on the shape, the neurons are classified into multipolar, bipolar, and then unipolar. So multipolar is the most common neuron in the mammals, whereas bipolar neurons usually it is present in the retina and then olfactory systems. Whereas unipolar mostly it is present in the astrocytes and then dorsal root ganglions, where the unipolar neurons are present. Now based on the functions, the neurons are classified into sensory neurons, that means which receive information or which senses the information. Then motor neuron, that means which sends the signals from the brain through the motor neurons. Then apart from that, there are some other types of neurons also are present, that is called as projection neurons, and then interneurons, that means present between the two neurons. So this is about the neurons. Now let us move to the non-neuronal cell present in the nervous system, that is called as glial cell. It is also called as neuroglia and then interstitial cells. So the non-neuronal cells play a crucial role as a supporting system or the supporting cells in the brain as well as the spinal cord. So whenever there is a damage or the death of the neurons takes place, that place is replaced by the glial cells or the neuroglial cells or the supporting cells or the interstitial cells. So the glial cells are broadly classified into three types: macroglia, microglia, and then ependymal cells. The macroglia is further classified into astrocytes and then oligodendrocytes. The astrocytes, the name suggests astro. You might have heard of astronomy, astrology. So these are all related with the stars. So the same way here, astrocytes, cytes means cell, astro means it is star shaped. So the shape of the cell looks like a star. That's why they have given the name it as a astrocytes. The important function of the astrocyte is it provides the structural support and it regulates the blood flow to the brain, and then it participates in the blood-brain barrier. And the next cell is that oligodendrocytes. I already told the oligodendrocytes is responsible for the myelination process, where the myelin sheath is formed in the CNS, whereas the same function is performed by the Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system. Next, come to the microglia cells. Microglial cells is nothing but the macrophage of the nervous system. That means it performs the immune functions. So whenever there are some infectious agents enters into the nervous system, then the concentration of the microglia increases. Then the last cell is that ependymal cells. The ependymal cells will line the ventricles and where it participates in the CSF productions. So these are the functions already I discussed. Now the last part of the today's lecture is that the barriers. There are two barriers are present in the nervous system. One is blood-brain barrier, another one is blood-CSF barrier. So here, to understand the blood-brain barrier and blood-CSF barrier, you need to remember two things. One is that where the capillary endothelium, another one is that cells. Now in blood CSF barrier first, the capillary endothelium will have fenestrations or pores. Whereas as there is a pore, then how come it will become a barrier? It may not, right? So that's why the next level or the cells which covers the blood vessel is the ependymal cells. So these ependymal cells will have a tight junctions. So whatever the nutrients which passes through this fenestration or pores that get abstracted, the interstitial cells, the interstitial fluid, where it get abstracted and it may not move forward. So these ependymal cells will selectively permeable to the nutrients as well as the required gases and then the other substances which is necessary for the body for the CSF production. So that is how the CSF contains the water molecules as well as the other nutrients because of the selective permeability. Now coming to the blood-brain barrier, where the blood vessels lacks the fenestration or the pores. So due to that reason, the endothelium itself, it will not permit any molecules to move or pass through. So due to that reason, they have to find a way to move from the endothelium to the extracellular, the interstitial fluid. So for that they use a transcellular pathway. Now in the blood CSF barrier, the transcellular pathway is made at the ependymal cell level, whereas here in the blood-brain barrier, the transcellular pathway is taken place at the endothelium or the capillary endothelium level itself. Now once it passes, then it will easily absorbed by the perivascular end feet of the astrocytes that acts as the contributes for the blood-brain barrier. So let me summarize what we have seen today is that we started with the organization of the CNS. From there, the CNS and the peripheral nervous system, then we have seen about the somatic nervous system, then autonomic nervous system, enteric nervous system. These are all the different organization of the nervous systems. Then I lectured on the brain and its divisions, where it has 6 divisions: spinal cord, brainstem, medulla, pons, midbrain, diencephalon, telencephalon. Then we have seen about the neuron and its types, and then non-neuronal cells such as glial cells and its types, functions, and then the last is that different barriers such as blood-brain barrier and the blood CSF barrier. So with this, we completed the first objective. Thank you.